introduce you all to the Supporting Individuals with CKD webinar. So thank you for joining us today. And before we begin, I would just like to go through a few housekeeping points with you. So all attendees are automatically muted. So if you do have a question during the session, you can either use the raise the hand function, which will allow us to unmute you when appropriate, or you can type your questions into the chat box function, and then we can read it out on your behalf and answer during the discussion. So today's webinar aims to support partners, family members and friends who are caring for someone, supporting someone with CKD. So our goals are to help you better understand what the CKD journey can look like, ensure that supporters feel valued, informed and reassured in their roles, and provide practical guidance on supporting someone whilst also maintaining your own well-being and self-care. We also want this to be a session where you feel safe and supported and that you can ask questions and learn from experience of others. But please do note that this webinar is being recorded, so we therefore ask that you avoid sharing any personal medical information that you might not want other people to hear about. And we are more than happy to take any questions you may have offline as well. So I'm delighted to introduce our guest speakers for today's session. We have Andrew Barnet, our social renal worker, who'll be sharing his professional expertise and insights into supporting people affected by kidney disease and the CKD journey. We also are joined with Helen Allen, the Patient Support and Information Manager at Kidney Wales, who will be discussing the support and resources available to patients and their families. Jenna Diaz, who is a volunteer ambassador for Kidney Wales, who will also be sharing her lived experience of supporting a child with CKD. And then we also have our final guest speaker of the evening, Lucy Hansen-Clarke, who is also a volunteer ambassador for Kidney Wales, a daughter of a CKD patient and a living kidney donor. And she'll be also sharing her personal lived experience. So thank you all for being here today. We hope you find today's discussion informative, helpful and reassuring. And I'll now pass over to our first speaker, Andrew.
Hi everybody, thanks very much for coming. So my name's Drew Barnett. I'm a renal social worker based up in Wrexham, North East Wales, and I work just with kidney patients and their carers. So I'm here to give a bit of a brief overview of chronic kidney disease, firstly, and then secondly, to give some ideas about what to expect as a carer. So the first and probably most important thing to say is that most people with CKD can lead normal lives. Most people won't be under the renal team at their hospital. And the NHS statistics says here that the vast majority of people, there's only 1 in 50 that will need to be coming for treatment into the hospital. So you can see from the graphic, it's a tiny percentage. Living with CKD can be difficult because there's no obvious physical symptoms at times. So your kidney function drops quite low when you start to feel fatigued. So other people don't know that you're living with this condition, which can make it harder. And it can also cause greatly increased worry and stress emotionally about what the future might hold. And this isn't to be underestimated. And this impacts both the patient themselves, but also family carers, friends around them when they know what's going on. So move on to the next slide. That's possible. Great. So this is a very rough guide to the CKD care pathway. There's no real set rule on these pathways. They differ across Wales. So this is a bit more of a generalised rough idea what it looked like. I kind of put this together speaking to the CKD nurses at Wrexham. So generally, CKD is managed by your GP, not in the acute hospital until your kidney function drops below 30. There will be a small minority of people who are referred in earlier than that. Sometimes it's for issues like renal anemia or blood pressure control issues. But generally speaking, that's how it works, I think, across the whole of Wales. For some people, if they're stable, they may stay with the GP until their EGFR drops below 20. So when the function drops below 20, people are usually referred in, or if they haven't already seen the consultant at the hospital, they'll be coming in to see the consultants on a regular basis, either 3 or 6 months. Sometimes these timeframes decrease depending on how your kidney function's going. And this is the stage when you'll have some detailed discussions about treatment options. So the different types of dialysis, hemodialysis, peritoneal dialysis, home hemodialysis. They'll discuss transplant options, everything about that. And for a small number of patients, they might talk about conservative care, which is when you don't have any active renal replacement treatment, although you're still treated for everything else that's going on around. And then lastly, when your kidney function drops below 10, that's usually when you need to start dialysis treatment. Sometimes it can be a bit lower. So some people, when their kidney function is 10, they still feel quite well. So at that point, if they're feeling well in themselves and they're being well managed with the bloods, it may be that they wait till they drop a bit lower before they start on dialysis. But once starting on dialysis, through this pathway, this form of treatment, either dialysis or transplants, is going to be needed for the rest of your life. So that's just a very rough overview. As I say, it varies from hospital to hospital, but that's kind of how we work up in North Wales. So moving on to the next slide, if that's possible. So that's giving you a very, very brief overview of CKD and how it works. So now we need to look at the role that carers can play in this. And it's quite a vital role in supporting people living with CKD. So there's some very practical things that you can do to support the person you care for. Everybody's different, so it is important to ask your doctor consultants for personalised advice, and some of these things will be different depending on you as an individual. But these are some of the more frequent issues that we often provide help and support with at the Myler in North Wales. So there's lots of research shows choices we make as individuals can have real significant impact upon our health. One of the main things of that is things like controlling your weight. This can help control things like blood pressure, which then puts less pressure on your vital organs. And then further down the line can also mean the patient can get to the stage when they might be considered for transplant sooner. One of the things that the transplant centres look at is your BMI, your body mass index. That needs to be within a certain range before they'll consider kidney transplant. There's lots of other reasons why looking after yourself is an important factor. Other ways to lead healthy lifestyle can be beneficial. So we try to encourage regular exercise. Keeping active can also help with your mental well-being as well as your physical health. Things like stopping smoking can also help people stay healthier for longer. And also making sure you're eating a healthy diet as well can be really important. Another factor that you can do as a carer is encouraging and prompting people to take medication as prescribed. Quite often people that come into the CKD clinics, this can be problematic. People aren't managing the BP, the blood pressure properly. Sometimes that can advance the CKD and mean you end up on dialysis a bit sooner. So it can be a really important practical thing that carers and people can provide support for patients with. So these tasks can include things like ordering the medication, collecting it, organising tablets, and also making sure that the patient gets the medication reviewed regularly. As I said, it's really important because if these things are neglected, the chance of your CKD deteriorating increases, and that brings you closer to your need in treatment. Also, as a carer, one thing you can do is being a positive role model and promoting all these things yourself as well. So if you're modelling, leading as healthy a life as you can within reason, whereas it's not possible for everybody, this does also help the patient to see that people can do it so they can too. And lastly with this, providing emotional support is really important too as a carer. People are worried, scared, possibly they're in denial and not wanting to open up about the CKD at times. So just being there can be a really important part for people being able to open up and talk about what's going on for them. Within all this, though, we recognise that as a carer, that you'll understandably sometimes feel a bit helpless too, weighed down by the same variety of worries that the patient's going through as well. So the next slide lists some of the common concerns that we talk about with carers. So as you can see, there's a few thought bubbles here with lots of different things going on. Again, as I said before, everyone's different, so there's no set thing that everyone will have the same worries about, but these are the ones that generally crop up when we're talking to people in CKD clinics. And it depends on a multitude of factors about what's going on with the person's health, what's going on with their family, what's going on with the societal factors around them. So, and also if a patient's already undergone or the carer's undergone health concerns themselves, they can be sometimes better prepared because they've seen what can happen and they're less apprehensive about the unknown. But equally, there is a flip side to that. And if they haven't had positive experiences, it can really greatly increase worry and anxiety. So working through some of these concerns in turn, health worries is one of the primary ones in the middle, as you can see. So often one of the things that we get asked about is it's about the unknown, what to expect, what to look out for. Kidney disease is a bit of a hidden illness in many ways. It's very difficult to stay and spot symptoms. It's not like when you've got a broken leg and you've got a cast on and you need equipment like crutches so everybody can see that there's something wrong with you, or something like diabetes when you're doing your daily blood checks and having to check and take your insulin and having hypos. Kidney disease is quite different to this. This can cause anxiety and stress for the carer, as the practical help somebody needs might vary from day to day. Another common concern that we talk about is finances. This can especially be the case if the kidney patient is the main earner in the family unit. So questions like, will work be understanding? Can you still work when you've got kidney disease? Can I work around it if I'm having dialysis? Support with finances is different across Wales. So renal social workers are present in all the units across Wales. So that's a good place to get some signposting support from about where to go. Some counties have welfare rights teams that can be very good to give you advice and support on this. Kidney Care UK have also got some patient support officers based, again, out of in all the trusts across Wales, so they can also refer on for benefit support. Citizens Advice Bureau can help, and some of the kidney patient charities do some great grants that can help in the short term, including Kidney Wales. Another concern we get is information overload. That's quite a common one. So there's so much to take in and so many ifs and buts, and it can be hard to know at times what information to trust. So primarily, again, it's important to listen to your GP or your consultant, depending who the lead clinician is, because they know your individual needs best. And every patient is individual and will have slightly different things that they need to think about compared to the others. But it's also important to seek other support and advice from reputable sources. And this can be through, again, kidney patient charities such as Popham, or information webinars through Kidney Wales, or again, Kidney Care have got a lot of great information leaflets. Another factor that people feel is often feeling quite isolated. Often carers can feel quite isolated from family, friends, work colleagues at times. And depending on your own support network, it can feel like you're quite alone and you're just trying to be strong for the person you care for. And sometimes you don't want to show that vulnerability that's going on and the worry and concern you've got for yourself. But that said, it's really, really important that you do try and look after yourselves as well as the kidney patients. Because if you don't look after yourself, it's really hard to look after anybody else. And I know there's some more coming up on this later on in the webinar. Family and social life is also can be impacted. So questions like, how will CKD and the treatment impact us all? Can we still go out? Can we still do day trips? Can we go on holiday? And sometimes people also worry about the change in role they've gone from being a partner, daughter, son, sibling, to all of a sudden feeling more like a carer, and the roles that they take on can be quite different. And then lastly, where do we get support from all this? With all this uncertainty, worry and stress going on around us. And this leads on to the last slide on my section. So if you can move it on, that'd be brilliant. Thank you. So there's lots of places to get support and advice from, thankfully, for carers as well as for patients. One of the main sources in Wales is through Popham Kidney Support. They've got some really good support services available. Many areas have got face-to-face kidney cafes run by patients, for patients and carers, where you can go and have a monthly coffee and a chat with the patients and talk about their lived experience of CKD and what's going on for them. And they've also just started an online carers forum that's specifically for carers. And they do some counselling as well. Other kidney patient charities are really helpful as well. Kidney Wales, events such as this webinar, and got different support and grants available. Kidney Care UK, as I say, have got the patient support and advice officers, and they can also provide some help to carers as well. Another way to get support is to find out what's available in your area for the carer support services. So, for example, in North Wales, in Flintshire and Wrexham, we've got something called NewKIS, which is the North East Wales Carers Information Service, but there's similar things across the whole of Wales. Although these aren't kidney specific, they can provide great support and advice, talking to other carers and about situations that they're going through, that help understand the challenges that you face as a carer. As I mentioned, all the health boards have got renal social workers, so we can offer support, advice and signpost you. And there's loads of information on websites that you can find. It's just making sure you're finding some reputable ones. There should be an information leaflet going around after the webinar that's got some of these on, so you can have a look through some of those. Your own support networks are going to play a really important part to be able to offload and talk through some of your worries and concerns away from the patient at times, and try to ensure you can maintain these as much as you can. It can be hard because you've got so much to think and worry about, but it's really important not to neglect your own needs. And lastly, on the slide, other health professionals at different parts of your CKD journey, can be really helpful. This can be the kidney care nursing teams themselves, or district nurses, or other people following on from this. So hopefully that's given you a bit of a brief introduction of CKD and what's around for carers. And that's my section finished. So I'll move on to the next speaker. Thank you very much.
Helen?
Okay.
Amazing.
Right.
Thank you, Helen.
Thank you, everyone. So I've just put some quotes up here initially from carers and people that I'm speaking to. And caring often becomes part of who you are and something that you do automatically without actually stopping to reflect on it. One of the key quotes I had was from a mum to say, as a parent, you never think you're a carer looking after a child compared to looking after an adult. Everyone is a caregiver or care receiver, And, you know, you might not realize it yourselves, but you will never know how much your caring matters. You might hear things like, oh, it's just what I do, others need me more. But when everything else becomes the priority, your own well-being can slip down the list. And it's important to recognize that caring is not sustainable without looking after yourself. So if your energy levels aren't topped up, you're not going to be able to keep going long term. And there was just one little thing I wanted to reflect on. So perhaps think about this while I'm sort of going through my slides, is when was the last time you prioritized yourself? Have a little think about that. Okay, next slide. Thanks, Georgia. So I popped up this, found this diagram. So I'm giving credit here to Juliet Young, who shared this via their Instagram account. And it's the carer iceberg. We've seen the iceberg used in lots of other scenarios in terms of what you see on the surface. And from a carer's perspective, it's, I'm fine, we're coping. Yeah, we're carrying on day to day. Been a bit of a shock. We've, you know, found out I'm caring for someone with CKD, or perhaps the stages have changed. But no, we're carrying on. When underneath, and as Drew has alluded to some of these things, there's the stress and the constant worry about it. It's a long-term condition. Financial pressures. Perhaps you are having difficulty accessing support or services, the social isolation, the mental health impact and anxiety, as you said, and challenges, perhaps trying to access services or get there. Hidden pressures will build over time. And if they're not addressed, they may eventually show up as stress, burnout, or health problems, which leads us on to the next slide. So as you said, there is, as Drew mentioned in his other diagram, there's lots of factors all around this, and it's important to recognize that burnout does not happen overnight, and it starts to build gradually. There are some signs here that you might not have thought about, or you might have recognized yourself that you're starting to feel as a carer. And that can be constant exhaustion, even after rest, or you think, oh, you know, I've had a good couple of nights sleep. It's not about that. It's about the day-to-day sort of worry and stress and carrying on. Starting to feel perhaps irritable, emotional, or tearful. And being at some of the events I've been at recently, I've spoken to some carers like that have started talking about what they're going through and started to think and get a bit emotional around it because they're feeling overwhelmed, really. And from that, sometimes you can start withdrawing from others and thinking, I haven't got the energy to go out like I used to, or you start missing perhaps group activities that you used to go to just simply because you think, oh, I can't be bothered, I'm too tired. You may start be getting other physical symptoms like headaches, illnesses, perhaps sometimes things like eczema, physical things on your body. And that might be as a result of stress. You might be putting it down to different things on your body that you're going through because of life or because of your age. But actually, stress can bring out quite a lot of physical signs that you might, as you said, fob off onto other things. And it could be the stress that's causing these issues. And the burnout, really, and not necessarily anything else. So be mindful of that and think why, what is happening here. As I said, sometimes I'm feeling overwhelmed or just stretched beyond capacity. And, you know, as we mentioned earlier on, you sort of say, well, it's part of my everyday activity. It's what I've got to do. It's weird, the situation that we're in. And that can just eventually build and build till it's too much, which then would lead to perhaps feelings of really feeling quite helpless, hopelessness. You're not getting through to people. People aren't coming back to you. And it can sort of lead, as you said, to a lot of stress and burnout. So some of the recent findings from the 2025 State of Caring in Wales, which is the Carers Health and Wellbeing Report from Carers Wales, have said, oh, they really highlight the scale of this issue as a carer. Over a third report poor mental health. Many are feeling overwhelmed due to a lack of breaks, and there's access to support. Again, it varies right across Wales, but sometimes this can be often delayed or inadequate. Okay, next slide. So recognizing these signs are essential, and it's important that you recognize that and look to put support in place before you reach a crisis point, before you burn out, before perhaps you end up being in hospital yourself through different things. So it's important to recognize this. Now, this slide I found here was about it's sort of a simple framework, if you like, for supporting mental well-being, the 5 C's, looking after you. So I'm going to just run through some of these, which Drew's touched on a little bit here, and about how important all of these things are. So the first one is connection. And that's about feeling connected. As you said before, you might have started pulling away from that. But this is relationships that we build with others. So that includes family, friends, colleagues, you know. They can provide emotional support to you, helping sort of reduce your feelings of loneliness and enhance your sense of belonging. Engaging with people often helps alleviate stress, improve your mood, and foster a sense of purpose, really. Seek out new connections, as I'll show you now by joining some clubs or trying to spend time with other loved ones. It's important to still feel that you have that connection, you don't get isolated. Compassion, interesting word, but this involves being kind and understanding towards ourselves and others, something that we probably all are a little bit guilty of not doing. And this is crucial for mental health because it sort of recognizes what you're going through. And it's about treating yourself with kindness and over avoiding self-criticism. Practicing compassion can help to reduce your stress, anxiety, and depression. So it's about sort of, if you like, sort of fostering empathy, you know, understanding life can be really tough sometimes. I've used a phrase quite a lot when I talk to people that I'm supporting, and that's cut yourself some slack. You're a human being. You need to keep your own energy levels up. Some things are in your control, some things aren't. You're doing a great job. You are human at the end of the day, and the person you're caring for does appreciate that. Nobody's perfect. Reach out and get that, but look after yourself as well. So don't get over anxious about things, or perhaps you've missed one thing or missed an appointment. Like you said, you know, so practicing that can help to reduce stress, anxiety, and depression. And that leads neatly sort of into coping, if you like. So this is about getting some skills and strategies to help navigate life's challenges. And effective coping mechanisms, putting things in place, are essential for maintaining mental health and resilience. So that can also reduce your stress there. So coping strategies like perhaps practicing mindfulness, engaging in a physical type activity. You don't need to run a marathon every day, 20-minute walk in the morning. When you've taken perhaps somebody to the dialysis unit, being able to just go and walk there, or once the person's been dropped to dialysis, that's your time out for yourself. And it's sort of like trying to put some coping mechanisms in place, or seeking support for that with help will then help you to sort of avoid more like negative coping mechanisms, perhaps sometimes turn into substances, drinking, you know, it turns into a negative spiral rather than a positive one. So it's important to find out what works best for you. And as I've said to many people before as well, if people offer to help, so if somebody offers to say, oh, I'll take John to the dialysis unit on Wednesday, let them. That gives you your time to then have some time for yourself. You know, people don't always offer to do things unless they want to help. And if they feel that they want to be part of them, let them. Don't think it's okay, I'm coping, or we'll be fine, oh, it's all right, thank you. People offer because they do want to help. And that it kind of leads into the sense of the community. So being part of a larger social network that provides support us and a sense of belonging as well. And these can be groups that you, as Drew has said about perhaps joining the kidney cafe, so you can speak to people that are on going through the same journey as you, or understand what it's like on a daily basis. Or it could be sort of just more other sort of support groups that you fancy joining or you used to be part of. And then you will feel a bit more of a sense of connection, which again helps to provide emotional support, reduce feelings of isolation, and again, perhaps help with your overall well-being as well. So moving on to the next slide. So when and where to seek support. So as we said, you need to seek support as soon as your caring responsibilities you think are starting to affect your daily life, your well-being, or your health. Looking after yourself is not selfish, and it helps you to care for others. And there's a variety of things you can do. As I said, it's not got to be big things, you know. So looking after yourself is not a luxury. They're essential. It's essential for resilience. So small actions like local libraries and community hubs offer a variety of activities and support. It might be a gardening club. It might be a knit and natter. It might be a men's shed. It might be just what do they have, like a men's group, for example, or it could be a Look Good, Feel Better group. I know they run some of those in the Maggie centres. Some of the leisure centres across Wales will provide free access for carers, so free gym membership, things like that. And don't forget as well, you are entitled to a carer's assessment under the Social Services and Wellbeing Act in Wales. That might be a waiting list. That might take a long time for you to think, oh, it's taking ages to get yourself on the list. It's better to be on it than not, and then see what support you can access locally, because every local authority does run things. Some run the same, some run it quite differently. So even small things like taking a 20-minute walk, listening to a podcast, just taking time to pause and breathe for yourself, can just provide you with connection, just a mental break and a chance to focus on something else. I know we might have people here saying, oh, well, I can't sing, but I run a choir for a local group. And what I say to the choir, they're for people that have been affected by cancer. However, they come at 6:30, they have a cup of tea, and they chat to others that are all in a similar situation. There's carers there, people being cared for. And what I always say to them is that I cannot fix what's going on in your life or what has gone on in your life, but I can give you that pause for an hour for you to just forget about everything and focus on something else. And it's also important as well to recognize the difference between rest and exhaustion. So I once said to somebody that my rest was 9 o'clock, I settle down, and but within half an hour of watching the TV, I fall asleep. And I was told off by that, saying that's not taking time out for yourself. Falling asleep straight away isn't relaxation. It's your body telling you it's absolutely exhausted and depleted. So that is not taking time out for yourself, unless you choose to think, at 9 o'clock, I'm sitting down and I want to watch this film and I've got my snacks and my cup of tea ready. That's you choosing taking time out for yourself, not you just sitting down exhausted and falling asleep. So from this, it's just start small, and then the small changes can make a big difference over time. Have a look at our accompanying resources booklet. Come to me. I've just literally been researching some information for somebody who's living up in North Wales as a carer, finding out what's happening locally. We can help you here in Kidney Wales as well.
Amazing. Thank you, Helen. And I just heard Helen mention the PDF document that has been pulled together. So if you can see on the right-hand side, there is a QR code there. If you are on a laptop and you've got your phone to hand, please do scan that and it'll take you through to that PDF document. It has lots of different things on there, some frequently asked questions, lots of different links to different resources, and a bit of information about what those resources entail. They cover some of the resources that Drew mentioned earlier and that Helen has mentioned now as well. So, guest speaker, Jenna Diaz. Jenna, have we got you there with
Hi.
us?
Yes. Am I on? Yeah.
Yes.
Hi. Right. Good. Hi everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I'm going to talk about caring for a child. So this is my little boy Raphael. He is now 5. He's just turned 5. He got quite poorly when he was 1, so he suddenly got quite poorly. So he didn't have kidney disease from birth. It just sort of came on really, really quickly and suddenly. And he went on to that left photo there is he was placed into like an induced sleep and put on continuous dialysis originally. And then he had hemodialysis for a few months in hospital, and then we opted for peritoneal dialysis at home following that. And so he was on dialysis for a year, and then he had his transplant, like it says there, in 2023. So yeah, I'm just going to talk about basically ways that I have found from the time that we were in hospital and living in hospital basically to now, and ways that I found to manage things and that sort of thing. So obviously, like I said, the journey's been quite sudden. I think everybody's the journey to a diagnosis is quite different, and ours was very sudden. So it was kind of a 0 to 100 in terms of my understanding of kidney disease and dialysis and you know, caring for a child with lots of needs. So it was, you know, really, it was overwhelming, really, and sort of just running on adrenaline for a while, I think. So now we've had a few years after the transplant, so it's literally was just the other day was the 3-year marker. And you know, he's doing really, really well. So there's like the, you know, we've had some obviously tricky times along the way, but he's having a really good spell at the moment. He's in school, in reception, and he's thriving. He's doing really well. So I just wrote down a lot of things that helped me, some of which might be also relevant if you're caring for an adult, just kind of to share the load, really. So I was offered some, I don't know whether it's offered to everybody, but because of the severity of it, of his diagnosis in the beginning and how poorly he was, and just that 0 to 100 of the whole experience, we were offered some sessions with the psychiatrist from the kidney unit, which my husband didn't opt for. My husband's a practicing Catholic and very involved in the church. And so that's where he felt that he could sort of unload, and he's got lots of friends in the community and everything. So he found that that was his outlet. And the children's ward, where the dialysis is, and the renal ward is actually really close to the chapel in Heath Hospital. So he had friends who would come and be with him, and that's where he found his strength. I did actually enjoy going to see the psychiatrist. I had about four or five appointments, I think. And I just found it was really useful to learn about like breathing techniques when you are feeling that sense of like being completely overwhelmed. And yeah, the breathing techniques like the box breathing, where you breathe in for 4, hold it for 4, out for 4, and then hold the out. I found all of those things really useful. And I remember a friend of mine said about noticing things. So when I was feeling really anxious, she said, oh, notice 5 things as you drive into the hospital. And even just little things like that were really useful to learn about, little tips that can just calm your nervous system just a little bit, you know, when you're going through something really tricky. I mean, things, you know, like day-to-day things that I found really useful. For me, I've always been quite an active person, and I didn't want to let that go. I've always felt like that was it just made me feel better generally. So I tried to carry on with that as much as possible. So because he was only 1 when he got poorly, obviously we couldn't leave him at any time really, but when we were in hospital we didn't leave him. So me and my husband or my mum would have like a swap system. And every time I had some time away from the hospital, I just felt like I needed to, you know, go for a walk. Like they say there's, you know, lots of studies, but they say that just like 20 minutes being around trees, all the different smells, does amazing things to your body. So fortunately in the Heath Hospital, there's the Heath Park next to it. So I would just go for walks, and even really short walks, just 10 minutes, just having that little bit of fresh air and just being away from that environment is it just changes your whole mood and just gives you that strength, I think, to go back in. And little things like I know Helen was just saying about like accepting help. I remember a few times, you know, friends would message and they'd say, oh, is there anything I can do? And at that time, when we were in the hospital a lot, and then post-transplant, when we were also just sort of at home a lot, people would say, oh, what can I do? And And I'd say, oh, I don't know really. And I got better. I know it sounds silly, but I got better at accepting help, because in the beginning, you do kind of think, oh, no, 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 we're fine, we're fine. And you do that whole thing, I'm fine. But then, people genuinely wanted to do something. They wanted to feel like they were supporting you in some way. So I remember friends would come to the hospital, meet me, and then we'd go for a walk together. And even just that 10 minutes of just being away, or just sitting down for a cup of tea, just going to the concourse, just being away from the ward for a little while, or just, leaving your home if that's where you are, just being out from that environment and just having a chat about things that aren't related to what is constantly whirring around in your head is like really powerful. And the other thing that we really found useful was people saying, what can I do? And food was a massive thing for us, just somebody cooking you a meal or something. And like I said, in the beginning, we were really hesitant to accept that support, but it really, like I've had situations, I'm sure everyone has, when somebody's going through something and you just really want to do something. So people sort of enjoy being that person to help and feel like they're doing something. So I would definitely recommend accepting little bits of help, if you feel like it's useful and you feel like you can, because that is 100% useful. And for us, things like, because we did spend a lot of time in hospital, and obviously this is different for everyone, but just taking in a few bits from home, like, the pillows aren't very comfortable. So I would take in a nice pillow, and I would always get cold, even though the ward was always really hot. But I don't know whether that was something to do with being like extremely tired, like extreme fatigue and just feeling like cold. And so I would always take in like a really nice blanket, and trying to be organized about things. Like, it's so easy when you're going through a stressful situation to just opt for like the easiest thing, like I'm talking really about diet and things, because it's so easy when everything else is all consuming to just think, oh, I'm just going to have that easy meal, or it doesn't matter, like, I'll start cooking next week, or I'll start eating healthier. And I just tried to be really organized about like taking myself in, like I got one of those bowls with a lid, and so I'd take in like a nice breakfast, so that when I wasn't like not eating, or not eating the right things as well. So I just tried to be really organized about those sorts of things, because otherwise it was going to end up that I wouldn't eat, and then I would feel terrible, and then I wouldn't have the energy to care, or so it's a vicious circle, really. So it's just trying to be, like a little bit organized about those little things, and just little touches that can just make the whole situation just like a little bit easier. And then the other thing, so aside from like exercise and any little exercise things, like, I love swimming. So whenever I would leave the hospital, the first thing I would do is go for a swim. But if that's not accessible, just a quick walk around the block, or gardening, or whatever it is that you feel like just takes your mind off things just for a little bit, even if it's, I don't know, a walk and then library, or whatever it is, just like something that you feel like just helps you a little bit. And then the other thing that I've written down here is like the power of talking. That is what I would say to another carer, particularly of a child, because obviously you are their voice. You know your child really, really well. My son was starting to talk at around the age that he got ill, but he couldn't have told me, I've got a headache or my belly hurts or anything. You know your child, and you know what's normal and what's not. And so I just feel like you are their voice. And as much as you have to trust the doctors and the consultants, you just have to, you can also advocate for them, and you can say, I've said things in the past where I've said, look, for instance, he said to me, like, privately recently, now he's more open and tells me things. He'll say like, oh, it really hurts when they try and get the blood from my feet, because he's quite hard to bleed. They've always had problems trying to get blood for blood tests, and now he goes for all of his checks, so he needs to have the bloods taken. And so it's just that he doesn't feel comfortable, you know, he's only 5, going to have his bloods taken and say, don't take it from my foot. You know, he doesn't feel happy about that. But I can be his voice for that and say, oh, could you try his hand today? Because you know, he's been telling me that it hurts on his foot. And that's one thing that I would say. I mean, he had, after the transplant, it's quite common to have UTIs. Not everyone does, but it is one of the things that are quite common, unfortunately. And he had one every month for a year after his transplant, which was just really unfortunate. And we sought out loads of different ideas of what we could do. And I was just going to say about the power of talking to people, because we'd spoken to the consultants, we'd asked numerous consultants, and they'd suggested a couple of different things and supplements that he could take. And we tried them and it hadn't come to any success. And then randomly, I was talking to our plumber who came to the house, who was talking about something that happened to his nephew. And it was a completely different scenario, not the same diagnosis or symptoms really. And he said, oh, my nephew ended up having a circumcision because he was having so many UTIs. So I just went back to my consultant and I said, is there any value in that? Could there be anything? And he said, it's not a bad idea. It's not a bad idea. And actually, he had a circumcision, and I don't know whether it's coincidence, but he hasn't had a UTI since then in 2 years. So you know, the power of talking to people, and this goes for, you know, we talk about this when we do our ambassador talks, is just that power of just talking and sharing what you've learned about CKD. And because, you know, like the first speaker said, it is one of those illnesses that goes undiagnosed for quite a long time. So it's just power of just talking to people, because yeah, like I said, I don't know if it's coincidence, but that decision for us and that chat that we had with the consultant absolutely turned things around for us. So yeah, that's the other thing I would say. The other thing I've got here are 2 books which we were given, which were supported by Kidney Wales. I know they were, I can't remember who they were written by, but they were a little bit old for Rafi when he was going through, because he was only 1. But this is the one for older children, and it's packed. It's a gorgeous book. It's absolutely packed full of information. And just the way that it's laid out is really beautiful as well. I'll try and find a nice page. It's just like lots of pictures and sort of cartoony images and stuff. And there's sort of like a diary section. And then this one is for younger children, and that's also gorgeous. And I would think about reading that to him now and showing him now, you know, as a 5-year-old. So that's probably the level that I would say it's at. And I would imagine, I can ask Georgia again, but I would imagine that you can ask the renal team if you can get a copy of this, or it might be Kidney Wales that sends it to you. I'm not 100% sure, but they're gorgeous books, because it's obviously really tricky explaining to, well, I've got an older son as well, so explaining what was happening and what was going on. So those are really lovely. Another thing that is useful for everyone, really, I would say caring for an adult as well. For me and my husband, it's been like mega valuable. We use it every single day. Is literally the reminders function on your phone. And if you can share that, so say, you know, there was 2 of you caring for somebody. If you share that on your phone, then you can just put like timed reminders on. So we do it for medication. And then if they've been ticked off, we know that the other person has given that medication at that time. And similarly, we've got shared notes. So if there's anything that we're concerned about, you know, because I'm terrible at thinking the worst about things, and I have like a panic and I think, oh, I must ask that at the next appointment. I can write a note in my shared notes, and he'll also see that as well. So if he goes to the next appointment, he can see all of those things that's gone through my head in one of my moments where I'm just overthinking things. So I would say that is a really useful tool as well to have. And then that's pretty much it. The Christmas parties and all of the events that Kidney Wales put on for children are amazing. They're just a lovely chance for you to sit and chat to other parents going through a very similar thing. And Popham, we've been to quite a few of the Popham family events as well, and they're equally lovely. And just a really nice chance to chat to other parents, and also there's usually people there to chat to as well, like from the charity, if you've like got any questions about any support that you might be able to, you know, look into or whatever. So yeah, I hope that's helpful. And yeah, if there's any questions, just pop them in the chat. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Jenna. A lot of really good takeaways there, and it's really nice to hear Jenna's lived experience. Obviously, there's lots of things that we're saying to you, but it's really nice to hear how they are working in practice, and even echoing then what Drew and Helen has mentioned. So, for example, when they were talking about doing something for your health, whether that's making sure you've got a nourishing breakfast to take into a hospital appointment, or going for that 10-20 minute walk, adapting where possible. We're not talking about complete habit changes overnight, just small little increments that you can do to support your own well-being. With that said, I'm going to pass on to our final guest speaker today, which is Lucy. And Lucy's going to be talking to you a little bit about her journey, and again, how she took care of herself during that time.
Hi there, everyone, and thanks for joining. Yeah, so my name's Lucy. I cared for my father, who you can see in the picture with me in my wedding dress, and I was a living donor for him as well. So my journey, my experience is very different, and from Jenna's, and probably from a lot of people. We all have our own unique journeys. In so much as an adult, looking after an adult, especially one that's your father, it can be quite a tricky relationship to be navigating as responsibilities overlap. And with my dad, things were different again, where first of all, his heart was failing, and then because of different things to do with that, his kidney, he only had one kidney, and then that started to fail. So everything was quite slow in a way where I can't actually pinpoint where I can go, yeah, this date was the date I started taking care of my dad, and the responsibilities kind of built up because it just happened over time. I was a mum at the time as well, so I was caring for my children. But slowly and surely, I kind of started looking after my dad more and more, taking him to appointments, helping him with shopping and cleaning and looking after the house. Him and my mother also were dance teachers at the time when things were changing. And as his health deteriorated and he wasn't able to teach anymore, I took over that as well. And I took over the male dance partner and was teaching with my mum in the evenings. So that was also something I kind of took on as well for the family. We're a really small family. I don't have any extended family, so it really did feel like it just landed on my shoulders. And the difference for me was that I didn't realize how much I was isolating myself and not asking for help and just expecting myself to deal with it. I was also going through a divorce at the time, so everything was just, it was all a bit crazy. So I would say about 2013, it was decided, yeah, he was going to need to go on dialysis. And then the talk about donation started to happen. And I needed to prepare myself for that as well because I was very overweight. My BMI was very high, as they talked about earlier on. It has to be under a certain BMI. I was a smoker, and so I needed to make massive life changes myself to enable myself to be a donor for him. So he started to have home hemodialysis then as well, which I was putting him on the machine and taking him off, and it's so tiring for them when that happens. And I was trying to be a support for him, keep his spirits up, and saying that he's the funniest person, and he's the most resilient, inspirational person you will ever have the privilege to meet. And he kept my spirits up as well. But more and more things kept on piling on. I was feeling really overwhelmed by the divorce, looking after dad, the responsibilities that I had, and I did end up actually having a nervous breakdown around that time too. I was having panic attacks, anxiety attacks, and it was really debilitating to the point where I couldn't even leave the house. So it was a real kind of slog to get back to kind of health and mental health. And what I did do, because I had isolated myself from all my friends, I didn't have that network. I accessed the GP, and I was given a mental health nurse who helped me come out and get out and start driving again and being part of society. And then slowly but surely, I started doing different activities where I was exercising anyway to try and lose weight, but that wasn't for me. That was for him and to get myself ready to be a donor. So I joined a dance group, which you can kind of see on the left-hand side there. I joined the Cardiff Cabaret Club. And even though nobody was really aware of what was going on and what was going on in my personal life, that actually helped because I could separate myself from that part of my life. And I became Lucy, part of the club, part of the cabaret club, and I'd go to classes and then every half a term there would be a big show that you could be part of, and there's costumes to make and dance routines to learn and you just become part of this community, which as you can tell, I've always loved dancing because I helped with their dance classes as well. So that was something that really helped, was going to classes and having that network of friends. I also had a transplant coordinator, which a lot of all I think all living donors will have, and she was great. She gave, she was there for me when I needed to talk. And I'm trying to think what I wanted to really talk about. So I think the difficulty was to do my dad not wanting to relinquish that relationship where he was the caretaker and then I was becoming the caretaker. And that we had to navigate that, but we did. And we, even though he still sees me as a 5-year-old, I think, even though I'm 46. Um, but we've always had a really good relationship, and I was very lucky to meet the man of my dreams then in 2015, and I really wanted him, dad, to be well enough to walk me down the aisle. So it was 2018, I became a living donor. He had the kidney following a heart transplant, and the kidney worked immediately. He would be complaining about how much he needed a wee all the time, which we found really funny. And he's doing really great. And yeah, he's still the same old dad. He's fantastic, and it's still going well. His heart is still going well. There's been no problems, no rejections. We've been very, very fortunate. And then I didn't know what to do with my life. That I found out recently it's called summit syndrome, where you focus your life on a goal, and when it's achieved, you're left feeling like, what now? What do I do? So I refocused myself and started an undergraduate degree in biomedical science. I'm not saying everyone needs to go to that extreme, but I really loved caring for my dad, and I wanted to make a difference in other patients' lives and their families because we're all affected by kidney disease. All the family is, and I just wanted to make a difference somehow. So I did a biomedical degree and then a master's in tissue engineering and regenerative medicine, which I am graduating next month. So I'm really excited about that. And I've been fortunate enough to go into research, and now I'm doing that. And it's just kind of moving forward, giving myself those little goals to be working towards, to feel like I'm giving myself meaning for to make me happy. Um, and I think sometimes along that road, you feel guilty that you're doing things for yourself and not, especially when you are in the depths of caring for somebody, when you're taking time out to do something for yourself, for your well-being, for your mental health, you can feel guilty. And sometimes people around you can make you feel guilty for taking that time, but it's really important, and it's been touched on several times now. It is really, really important. I if I can if my story can share anything, is that the importance of not isolating yourself, of not withdrawing, of not feeling like you have to do it all yourself. And if you don't, that you're failing, and that you're not being the daughter, the son, the parent that you were meant to be, because there's all these expectations that you're meant to be perfect, and that you putting that on yourself. But like Helen said, you're doing your best, you're only human, and you can only take so much. Your cup can only be so full at one time. So it's not selfish. When you're in an aeroplane, they tell you to put your own mask on first. It's the same thing. You need to look after yourself and do things that make you happy. And that's my biggest takeaway for this, for anyone who's listening, is to take care of yourself as much as you are for the person that you're caring for. Thank you for listening. And if you've got any questions, please feel free. Try, kidney whales I didn't know about at the time, and they do so much and they give so much help. So access everything that you can, and you're not alone, and you don't have to be alone going through it. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Lucy, for sharing that story. And thank you, everybody who has been with us throughout the webinar and just listening in to what all of our speakers have had to say. I want to say a massive thank you to all our guest speakers as well. And I would just like to remind you guys of the PDF document that is available. So if there is any information here that has stood out to you and you want to follow up afterwards, please do look at that document, because it is all included in there as well. And just if you take anything away from this, I think consistently across the board, our guest speakers have said, take time for yourself, no matter how much time that is, whether that's 10 minutes to yourself, an hour to yourself, whatever you're able to fit in. Do try and make time to do that. Do take the time to care for yourself. And if you're showing up at 20%, but you've only got 20%, that's still showing up at 100. But just making sure that you are taking that time to care for yourselves. So thank you, everybody. I'm going to stop the recording there. If anybody does have any remaining questions, please do email us over at support@kidneywales.cymru, and we'll be happy to pick them up there for you. Thank you, everybody, for watching as well, if you're on YouTube.